Steph, now that the dust has settled, what did this year kind of reveal to you about the core that you have and what you guys need to do to be as good as you want going forward?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it just revealed the kind of character that we have. The toughness, the relentless spirit, the flexibility, the versatility and coachability, honestly. And I think laying the foundation of, number one, expectations, and number two, what healthy working relationship looks like, because all teams aren't the same. For our core group, I think is really important. And then learning what it takes on a daily basis to put yourself in positions for success. And what was the second part of that? Okay. All right.
Would you, given the year you had with the injuries, with so much roster change, and personally describe this as the most challenging year you've had coaching? And if so, how did that, kind of change your day-to-day, what you did and the product that you put out on the floor?
Yeah, I'd say so. It was challenging in a number of levels. But with that challenge was also probably one of the most supportive, times that I've had, because oftentimes when we go through challenges, it seems like you're alone, and it didn't at all, throughout the course of this year. And it's really is a testament to the group that we have. So it has been that for sure. It's just still so fresh that I really haven't had a lot of time to reflect. But this group and what we were able to accomplish and the foundation that we were able to lay, all the while knowing, I said this at the beginning of the year to our team, but I truly believe that connected teams are winning teams, and making sure that, no matter who comes into our locker room, comes into our organization, that is a priority. Elliot.
Hey, Coach. If you had to sum up the season in one word, what would it be and why?
That's tough. I mean, I guess the overarching theme is just resilience, just because this group has showed so much resilience.
Chloe? Kelsey obviously posted yesterday that she played until the wheels fell off. Just, I guess, first, what has she meant to you this season? And second, obviously, rhabdo can come from overexertion. So what in the future would you or the training staff do to kind of be more cognizant of the possible symptoms of that going forward?
Yeah, I mean, Kelsey's meant a lot to me. She was the number one priority in free agency. I have always admired, how she plays the game and what she brings to a team, and was certainly looking forward to an opportunity to coach her and work with her. I've watched her for a long time from afar, calling her games and certainly in the WNBA. She's just the ultimate competitor. She's a great human being. And she does literally leave it all out on the floor. And, as a former player and as a coach, the appreciation that you have for somebody who does that is just, it's at an all-time high. And so I have so much respect for how she goes about her business and the way that she plays. As far as the health issues and things like that, I'm not as familiar with that. I think the most important thing, for me as a coach is continuing to remind players of the importance of recovery, hydration, all of those things. So, I'm still just learning about this. I think this is usually something we see in football, right? In the fall or in the heat when they first start camps and things like that. So I think making sure that we have an awareness, number one, and number two, that we're continuing to emphasize, from a coaching standpoint, hydration, recovery, and all the things that entail putting your athletes in position for success.
Go Lou, then Alexa.
Lou Friedman from the Seymour Tribune. You mentioned character. Is that something that, we sensed that a little bit on the opening day of the season when we were introduced to all the players, but so many players came and went. So sustaining that, and also at this point, you really don't know who's going to be around next year because of the draft and all that. How can you, as an organization, keep selling that point when you kind of don't know who the personnel are going to be?
Well, I think our core group, the ones that we know are going to be here, it's got to be a priority for them to, culture is obviously organic and it's ever changing, but making sure that anyone who comes into the building understands what our culture is. It's peer led a lot, oftentimes. So I think our core group understanding how important that is. And I think Kelly and Amber did such a great job in the off season and throughout the course of the season. Each time we had to bring in a new player of really diving into not just what type of player are we getting, but what type of person are we getting. Amber has said it from day one. We want quality human beings in our locker room. And obviously sometimes, there are misses because it's sport and that happens. But at the same time, it's about the group and how the group continues to move that culture forward and take ownership of that. Because most of the time, as a teammate, you want to feel like you're in it together and you create that environment in the locker room.
Alexa.
Hi, Steph. I guess I know it's all still fresh, but at this point, I guess how are you starting to think about approaching the offseason with Caitlin, both from a, just getting her back on the floor standpoint with the recovery and rehab, but also just once she's back on the court, what that will look like and, trying to get her back?
Yeah, obviously those are some conversations that we'll continue to have with Caitlin, but, I think first and foremost, as she builds up her endurance, her on-the-court activity, making sure that she's healthy, and then continuing to move forward in terms of mechanics, number one, and number two, basketball. She's got to, at some point in this off season, play 5-on-5. It's going to have been a long time since she has, and so how we get that together, we'll have to see. We'll continue to have those conversations, but once she's feeling good from a movement standpoint, from a soreness standpoint, and then building back that endurance on the floor without losing some of those, mechanical tweaks and mechanical improvements. Then we'll start building back up, and it's a long off season, and she's had a long, year from this point. So it'll be baby steps, and I think for us, again, the most important thing is that she's healthy before we really, really ramp up.
Brian, then Josh.
Stuff with Lexi Hull, she kind of seemed to find her shot there. I think it was after the game at home against Chicago when she really took off. What did you see from her just in terms of her improvement? Like, did she make adjustments to her shot, or was it really just as simple as trusting that the shots were going to fall as long as she continued putting in the work, and then also just her importance to the run and success that you guys had over the postseason?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. Lexi came back, a much more aggressive, assertive player from Unrivaled. And, was early especially and late, but she's just a hard player to take off the floor because of how hard she plays, because of the fact that she plays on both ends. She's not just an energy player, she's a toughness player. She does all of those things that you can't teach. I feel like her shot, oftentimes the shot's just a mental thing. And at various points throughout the course of the season, she was defended differently. She's defended differently when Sophie and Caitlin are on the floor with AB and Kelsey than she is when they're not playing. She's defended differently when Aries on the floor and her speed and ability to get downhill and force people in rotations than she is, with Odyssey or with Shea on the floor. She probably went from, 6'7" on the scouting report to 3'4". So it's there's a number of factors that go into it. I know that, from my standpoint, like I'm never worried about her shot. It always looks good. She always takes good shots. And as someone who played the game, the most important thing is that she stayed confident in that and continued to take them.
Hey, Coach. Good morning.
Good morning.
What impressed you about how AB handled and approached the ups and downs of the season?
AB's just solid and mature. She's just a mature human being. She gets the big picture. She understands. She just wants to contribute in a way that helps her team. I continue to say she was probably the most affected by all of our change, and she just continued to roll with it, and she continued to do what she could to impact the ball game, and most importantly, did what she could to impact our team. She's the rock. She's the one who keeps everybody, settled, keeps everybody calm, manages situation. And I think you saw her continue to improve in different ways throughout the course of the year. I expect that improvement to continue in this offseason.
We can go back to Pat, and then we'll come back to the front.
Hey, Steph, Rick Carlisle was sitting there on Monday at Pacers Media Day, and he spoke to how much he appreciates having you to bounce things off of, and you both obviously got great staffs, but I'm wondering if you can speak to the value of having somebody like Rick Carlisle in this organization and how beneficial that can be to both of you.
It's huge. Continuing to get messages from Rick and being able to have conversations, and of course Jenny's one of my really good friends. It's important. It helps me, number one, maintain perspective, because sometimes it gets a little crazy. And number two, just to be able to bounce ideas off of, think of things from a fresh perspective. There's probably very few things that I will go through that he hasn't gone through, and to be able to have a relationship to communicate that is important. Now, that's one thing I always appreciate about our franchises. I had the same thing when Frank was here. In fact, saw Frank in LA and continue to have that relationship. So I do appreciate that about this organization and our franchises, is that we do. There are always really good people, number one, and opportunities to bounce things off of each other and to continue for me to learn and grow.
Scott?
Stefan, because of all the chaoticness, it felt like you guys were never able to settle in. So can you just describe kind of the outline of what you had hoped, maybe the offense and defense, what more you could have done should you be healthy?
Yeah, I mean, year one is always going to be, kind of layering. So we probably always would have been at like level 1, 2, or maybe 3 in anything that we wanted to do. It's learning. It's learning what each player is capable of absorbing, but it seemed like we could never quite get to that level 2, whether offensively it's reads, changes in alignment, tweaks, complexity in action, or defensively, being able to mix up coverages, whether it had been on multiple players, scheme throughout the course of a possession. It was just, we were very basic. And then every time, we had an adjustment to make, we had to go back to being very basic. I don't know if it's true or not, but I feel like this group that finished the season was probably together the longest throughout the course of the year. Do we have any idea about that? It feels like it. So in the playoffs is when we were finally able to start tweaking a little bit of things. So my hope is that we get a lot of the players back, and that we won't be starting over necessarily, and then that we can continue to build layers on top of the foundation that we laid.
McCoy?
Yeah, obviously you've been through a few off seasons, but this one seems like it has more unknowns with, the new CBA, the double expansion draft. Just how do you, as a coach, navigate this off season with all of those unknowns kind of just looming?
Really very much like I talked about navigating the entire season. It's like one day at a time. It's you get exhausted if you start thinking about the what ifs and what can happen. And right now it's about wrapping up what we've done here and, communicating with each of our players, laying out foundations for the ones that we know are going to be back or anticipate being back, and things that we can do in the off season, and then rest, recovery, so that I can have the energy to do all the other things. So I think it's speculating about what's going to happen, what could happen. It's just exhausting. Probably would have done that 10 years ago. Right now, I'm just going to be where my feet are. I'm going to, take it one day at a time. We'll have conversations, certainly as a staff and organization. But until we know what direction we can go, it's just being in the moment.
Time for one more in the back with Rich.
Steph, just how remarkable was what this team did this year?
Yeah, I think if you ask me in 3 or 4 weeks, I'll probably have a more in-depth answer, because I really haven't had a time to process everything. But it even throughout the course of the season, it doesn't go unnoticed or doesn't escape me just how unique this group was. There are a lot of groups and a lot of talented groups that I've coached or been a part of that would have folded, right? That would have just used every excuse in the book to not put ourselves in position to be successful or to make excuses, and this group didn't. And it seemed like every step that we took, whether it was unknown or not, and whether it was a good result or a bad result, they allowed us to push them a little harder, push them a little further, challenge them a little bit more, and all the while, the entire group, we loved on each other. I mean, like, look, we went through some real human emotion throughout the course of the year. I mean, seeing your teammates go down, seeing some things like that, it hits you. And you have to process that in order to be able to move forward. I think as coaches, certainly for me, I can't speak for everybody else, but part of the ability to just be in survival mode and problem solving mode is what kept us going. Your adrenaline keeps you going, and yes, it's the job, but number two, it's like when you're putting really good people in positions for success and they're giving you everything that you have, it is your job to find out, and you want to find anything and everything that you can do to put them in those positions for success. And so, being able to be in problem-solving mode kept me going. Again, I think when I have a chance to sit down and really reflect, on this, you can look back and probably think it's pretty incredible what we did. But as competitors, you're 5 minutes away from the WNBA Finals, and that sits in a very uncomfortable position the entire offseason.